On an absolutely historic night inside Milan Pushkar Stadium, the West Virginia Mountaineers pulled off an improbable upset of the Pitt Panthers in the 108th edition of the Backyard Brawl. Why improbable? Because they had to make a fourth quarter comeback to do it. And in this episode, I'm going to talk about what answers were we given? What answers did we get to questions we had during the course of that game? Because going into it, there were a lot of questions. Some were answered, some were not answered. That's what we're going to talk about in today's episode, and we're going to have that conversation right now. What is up, and welcome into this episode of Couz's Corner, your home for top shelf college sports news and analysis surrounding the West Virginia Mountaineers and the Big 12. We are going to attempt to answer some questions that we had going into this West Virginia game against Pitt, try to put a bow on this thing before we move ahead to talking about the Kansas game. It was a historic night, one of the greatest nights of my life as a sports fan, especially a West Virginia sports fan. I was blessed enough to see this game in person, experience it in all of its emotion, roller coaster ride, the whole 9 yards. It was a very, very fun time, very exciting night. I'm glad I was a part of it. Most of you, even if you were watching at home, I'm sure it was a roller coaster of emotions. And as Mountaineer fans, we've been riding high since Saturday, right? Since Saturday night. But it's about time to move on. But before we do that, I wanted to talk about some answers that we might have gotten during the course of that game. Did West Virginia play the perfect game? Absolutely not. There are still a lot of questions to be answered later on, and there are still a lot of areas this team needs to work on. And we're going to look at some pro football focused numbers today that helps us answer some of those questions, along with just a good old fashioned eye test, right? That all of us were able to get a feel for during that game. I think the first question that we all had going into the game was who was going to be our QB1 going forward. And even in that game, during the course of that game, West Virginia didn't decide on who their QB1 was going to be. Nico plays the whole first half. The team's up 7-3 at halftime. The offense had sputtered at times, didn't look great. So after half, he brings Scotty Fox in, who plays 3 series, 2 ended in catastrophe with interceptions deep in their own territory. That was after a touchdown drive that he led. Then Jalen Henderson comes in, had 1 series, didn't look terrible, didn't look great. Offense didn't do anything special. But I think what we did learn is that Scotty Fox is probably not ready as a true freshman just yet to be put in those types of situations. He was like a deer in headlights out there a little bit. So I think we got that question answered. He's probably not ready yet. So I think now it comes down to either Nico or Jalen Henderson, because we don't know where in the world Max Brown's been. He hasn't even gotten a shot yet. And apparently Khalil Wilkins isn't in the mix either, because he hasn't gotten a shot since the Robert Morris game. So it looks like it's down to 2 guys, Nico and Jalen Henderson. And did Nico play the perfect game? No, he did not. But when you look at his pro football focus numbers, I think he showed us, though, that he is the right guy for the job, at least right now, when it comes to throwing the football. Yes, he's not the best runner out there. He looks a little slower than he did a year ago. And he's not really a threat to run in the RPO game, at least not right now. But, man, when you look at these PFF numbers, for example, Nico's PFF grade in that game was 61.9, his overall PFF grade. His passing grade was 73.7. Overall for the season so far, his PFF grade is 70.4 overall, 71.8 passing the football. Now, I was one of the people who said, hey, as long as we're not going to have a running game because Jahiem White's out, as long as our offensive line is going to struggle to block, we need a quarterback who is a threat to run the football. But here's the thing. One of those other questions got answered too. And because of that, and because of Nico's performance and the fact that he put this team on his back, the moxie he showed to lead that team to a come-from-behind victory and showed that he's a winner, you add that into the fact that he's obviously your best option when it comes to throwing the football, and now we have a running game with Ty Edwards. I think he's your guy. Now, I'm not saying if he goes out and plays terrible against Kansas that you just give him an unlimited leash. And I'm not saying that maybe you sprinkle in another quarterback here and there, but I think at the end of the day, Nico proved he's the QB1. He has the leadership skills. He has the moxie. He has the hard edge. He's got the it factor, in my opinion. The only thing he really doesn't have right now is the running threat. But I think they can establish that if they can improve in other areas. One of which is running the football consistently, which brought us to question number 2 that I had, or that most of us had. Who replaces Jahiem White? How do you have a running game without him? Someone by the name of Ty Edwards comes to mind. Ty Edwards went out and had an absolute marvelous day, running for 141 yards on 25 carries, averaging over 5 yards per carry. Of those 141 yards, 94 of those were after contact. He was able to break through tackles. Even when the O-line didn't give him a huge hole, he was able to make plays anyway. So the question was answered. Who's going to replace Jahiem White as a primary running back who can make plays? It's Ty Edwards. And oh, by the way, while he might have been the MVP of the offense, or at least co-MVP with Nico, you know who else deserves a shout out? Judge John Preston Bailey. That's right. The judge who ruled him and 3 other Mountaineers eligible to play this season after they filed suit against the NCAA, because had he not made that ruling, had he ruled against Ty Edwards and those other players, he would not have been able to play in that game. And we would, Clay Ash would likely have had to been the horse for that game. And even though Clay Ash made some plays, even though Clay Ash is dependable, he's your steady Eddie guy, he doesn't have the explosiveness of a Ty Edwards to be your primary running back, in my opinion. But Ty Edwards does. What were Ty Edwards' PFF grades? Well, let's take a look at it. He goes out and scores a 76.2 overall grade and a 76.1 run grade on the day. Awesome performance. He was the top offensive performer for the Mountaineers in this game. Not only from the eye test perspective and the over just the basic stats perspective, but also from the PFF perspective. By the way, overall team grade for West Virginia, which I forgot to mention, 63.6. Offensive grade only a 56.5. So there are still a lot of questions on this offense. And we'll get to most of those in just a minute when we talk about the offensive line. But right now, we have the answer, I think, at quarterback with Nico. I think we have the answer at running back with Ty Edwards and who replaces Jahiem White, which brings us to question number 3, which is, can the offensive line improve? And we'll get to that. But first, let's take you to this quick commercial break. Both the NFL and college football seasons are in full swing, and every touchdown brings you closer to a payout with DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NFL. Whether you want to bet on NFL games, whether you want to bet on the upcoming West Virginia game, or any other sporting event you want to bet on, you can do it right now at DraftKings Sportsbook. And for new customers, this one's for you. Bet just $5 and get $300 in bonus bets instantly. Plus, grab over $200 off NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. Your season starts now. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app and use code Couz, that's code COUZ, to get $300 in bonus bets instantly when you place your first bet of $5 or more. Plus, over $200 off NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. In partnership with DraftKings, the crown is yours. Do you have a gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. In New York, call 877-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY. 467-369. In Connecticut, help is available for problem gambling. Call 888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org. Please play responsibly. On behalf of Boot Hill Casino and Resort in Kansas, fees may apply in Illinois. 21 plus, age and eligibility varies by jurisdiction. Void in Ontario. Bonus bets expire 7 days after issuance. See sportsbook.draftkings.com/promos. NFL Sunday Ticket offer for new subscribers only and auto renews until canceled. Digital games and commercial use excluded. Restrictions apply. Additional NFL Sunday Ticket terms at youtube.com/go/NFL Sunday Ticket/terms. Limited time offer. Hey, do me a favor. Go check out my good friends over at Appalachia Digital. If you need a brand new website for your small business, or if you're just looking to get found easier on Google, go check out appalachiadigital.com/Couz. These are the fine folks who designed my brand new website over at wvsportschat.com. They did a fantastic job. I love their work. I think you will too. So go check them out. appalachiadigital.com/Couz. Let them know Couz sent you. Now let's get back to the show. Thank you for being patient, letting me pay the bills. The next question I had going into the game, and I think a lot of Mountaineer fans did too, was the O-line. The O-line has struggled so far this season, especially in the run blocking department, right? And we were a little worried about that. Could they establish a run game without Jahiem and without O-line struggling, without a quarterback that's a run threat, right? Well, I'll be honest with you. Those questions to me, or that specific question rather, is still there. They did not play as well as, at least according to Pro Football Focus anyway, as I thought they did. I mean, when I watched the game in person, of course, I was sitting in the end zone, so I wasn't able to see everything great. But I thought, man, they're opening some pretty good holes, and they did at times. It looked like when they were running trap plays, the guards were pulling and getting to their spot faster. And they did open a few creases for Ty Edwards. But what I also noticed was even when he had a crease, he was still having to break some tackles at or near the line of scrimmage for him to get yardage. And sometimes those creases closed very quickly, and sometimes there wasn't a crease and he had to create one. So they didn't play terrible, at least not from a pass blocking perspective. Nico had some time to throw, but from a run blocking perspective, they still struggled. And I will even say this about pass blocking. They regressed a little bit in that department as well. The run blocking grade for West Virginia as a team was 42.3 overall, the lowest of the season so far. Now, not all of that is O-line, but in a minute, I'm going to read their grades off, and you'll see that most of it was. They did not have a great day, especially from a run blocking perspective. Let's go ahead and look at the run blocking grades, okay? Let's go ahead and start left to right. Nick Cray, left tackle, run blocking grade of 51.7. Left guard Walter Youngbear, run blocking grade of 50.9. So remember, 60 is average, okay? So both of those are below average. Center, Landon Livingston, 49.4 run block grade. 49.4. Right guard, Kimo Makaniole, 44.3 run blocking grade. And your right tackle, Tykeus Crawford, had a run blocking grade of 54. He was the highest of the group. 54. Still 6 points below average. Not one player had a run on the O-line had a run blocking grade above 54. Still not a good day. Now, didn't really show up in the stats. They ran the ball well. But I think this goes to show that Ty Edwards had even how much of a hand he had in that. And then you've also got to give credit to some of your tight ends, some of your wide receivers who also had decent days in the blocking game. And credit to Coach Rod. We saw him using the perimeter more. They ran more toss plays to the outside. I think they're trying to get guys on the edge more and then rely on your perimeter blocking in that regard to do the work for you, which I think the perimeter blocking, at least right now, is probably better than the O-line blocking, unfortunately. Now, what about how they do in the pass game? Pass blocking. Well, they regressed there as well from week 2. Nico went from having 2.67 seconds to throw the football to this week he only had 2.4 seconds to throw the football. And I know 2/10 of a second doesn't sound like a lot, but you got to remember that's over the course of a game. It's an average, right? And so 2/10 of a second in that regard is quite a bit. And so they actually were, and their pass blocking grade, which I actually failed to write down, was actually worse than a week ago. But I failed to write the team grade down, but I did write down the individual grades. Here they are. Again, going from left to right. Left tackle Nick Cray, pass blocking grade of 78. Not bad. Not bad at all. We'll take it. Left guard Walter Youngbear, 61.2 pass blocking grade. Slightly above average. Not terrible. Center Landon Livingston, a 69.3 pass blocking grade. Not bad. But then let's get to the right side of the line. Kimo Makaniole, his pass blocking grade, 29.5. That's not winning football. Now, your right tackle, Tykeus Crawford, 45 pass blocking grade. So the right side of here's the grades from the right side of your offensive line. Makaniole had 44.3 and 29.5, and Crawford had 54 and 45. That is the right side of your offensive line. Now, the fact that you got a left-handed quarterback, if the left side of your line continues to play better than the right side, which is the opposite, the week before it was the opposite. So there's a lot of inconsistencies here. And I know PFF's not the end-all be-all, but there are some inconsistencies. One week the right side plays better, the next week the left side plays better. But overall, as a unit, they're not playing well still, especially in run blocking. Okay? That's why someone like a Ty Edwards is so critical. Someone who's a bigger back who can run through some arm tackles and run through regular tackles for that matter. But yet I think he's got enough shiftiness to him that he can make people miss when he needs to. We saw that on the first touchdown run he had. He made some people miss on that. So I think you've got to have a guy like Ty Edwards be your number one guy, be your workhorse. But at the end of the day, Rich Rod's going to, until this O-line, hopefully they'll continue to improve, continue to get better. But it's not going to get any easier, folks. You've got Kansas coming up on the schedule, followed by Utah, who, if they can beat Texas Tech, might end up being a top 10 or top 15 team coming in a couple weeks. Then you've got teams like BYU, TCU, Colorado, UCF, Texas Tech, Arizona State. You've got all these good teams on your schedule, all these Big 12 teams, and you've got to have better blocking up front by this O-line because you've got some really good defenses coming up. All right. Now, the final question I had, and I'm sure other Mountaineer fans had too, how does the defense play without Jimmori Robinson? We thought he might play against Pitt, ended up not playing. Apparently did not make it through enough practices. You have to have so many practices on your belt and so many padded practices on your belt with full contact before you can play in a game. He obviously didn't get that. At least that's what I'm assuming. So he didn't play. He should be back, or he should be playing, we hope, should make his debut against Kansas this week. But our concern was, how will the defense play when you don't have a pass rusher, an elite pass rusher like Jimmori Robinson? But guess what? They've been able to figure it out. Zach Alley has been able to work his magic, and he has been able to find guys to bring pressure from different angles, from different positions. And just, we've heard some of the players talk about how this is a defense where it provides an opportunity for everybody to make a play. And that's exactly what they've done. It hasn't been coming from just one person. It's been coming from all over. One game it might be, Edward Vestarin. The next game it might be, Eddie Kelly or Hammond Russell or Fred Perry coming in from the safety spot, getting pressure on the quarterback. And not just pressure on the quarterback, but stopping the run. Pitt had struggled to run the football. I think they had, 46 rushing yards or something like that? 1.3 yards a carry. They're covering well on the back end. Michael Coach Jr. is basically cutting off half the field this year. I think they've thrown one ball his way the entire season so far. He's given up 2 yards passing, folks, 2 yards receiving, rather, as a defensive back. The secondary just had the best coverage grade that WVU has had back there as a unit since the 2020 season. That comes from the Pro Football Focus podcast show when they were doing their preview. Michael Coach Jr.'s PFF grade, you ask? 80.1 overall and 80 in coverage. 80. That's elite level. So, Michael Coach Jr. is the man back there. And speaking of the pass rush that I mentioned earlier, Jed Drenning gave us some stats on Twitter that really stood out to me. We were worried about the pass rush. West Virginia right now is second in the country, tied for second in the country in sacks. Some other key defensive statistics. They're 19th in the country in third down defense, 14th in the country in opponent red zone touchdown percentage, and tied for 14th in the country in total takeaways or forced turnovers. I said it before, and I'll say it again. This defense will continue to keep West Virginia in just about every football game they play, in my opinion, which is great because what's that mean? It gives your offense time to get better, to improve, to gel. And that's what we're seeing. I'll tell you what else it does. It keeps you in games until you get until late in the end when the other teams start to wear down because of West Virginia's awesome physical conditioning. We've heard Rich Rod talk about it. Our goal is to wear team. If we can get teams in the end, we can win because we're going to be in better shape than they are. We saw that against Pitt. West Virginia outplayed Pitt late. A big part of that could have been their physical conditioning. And if some of those cramps that we thought were fake injuries, if they were actually legit cramps, which I don't think most of them were, we didn't see West Virginia's players cramping up. I heard J.J. Kitchen over on his show, who's a Pitt guy. talking about, we didn't see West Virginia doing that. That's right, because they're in elite physical condition. Kudos to the strength and conditioning staff for that. But this defense flies around to the football. They play aggressive. They play with a mean streak. They play with a hard edge. And they bring pressure from different places. Different guys are stepping up. They don't have anybody at the top of the list in sacks necessarily, but they have 3 guys with at least 2. Fred Perry, Hammond Russell, Eddie Vestorinen all have at least 2 sacks on the season. And you have multiple guys who have 1 or 1.5 sacks on the season. It seems like it's somebody different on every play. Different people pressuring the quarterback, different people making plays in the backfield, creating chaos, creating havoc, as they call it. So this defense is playing well because of Zach Alley's scheme, because of his ability to teach this defense, and the players' ability to execute the defense that he's coaching them up to execute, and because of the effort they play with. So, yes, it's going to be great to have Jimmori Robinson back, but they're likely going to have to sprinkle him in a little bit at a time until he's up to game shape, able to play a full game. They might only bring him in on third down passing situations. Maybe not even that much. I don't know. You got to be careful, in my opinion, because you don't want to screw up the chemistry of this football team that they've established. And I know he's been on the team, but he hasn't been out on the field with these guys yet in a game situation. So I say sprinkle him in, use him in third down and long, or second and long passing situations where you need to get after the quarterback from your edge rusher. That's, in my opinion, that's where you start out using Jimmori Robinson. And we may see a lot of that this week against Kansas with Jalen Daniels back there. Kansas is coming off a bye week. They're going to be fresh. So it may not hurt to have a guy like a Jimmori Robinson who's still fresh in his own right, maybe too fresh, coming at him off the edge. So I am excited about having Jimmori Robinson in the lineup. But I think this defense has proven that even if he was not able to come back and play, I trust Zach Alley. I trust this defense and what they're able to do with guys like Braden Siders, Eddie Kelly, Curtis Jones, Devin Grant. All those guys are playing really good football right now, and they're only going to continue to get better as the season progresses. Jimmori Robinson is just one more piece to add to it, and he could end up being the best of the bunch as we expected. Imagine that. If those guys continue to get better, and then Jimmori Robinson is able to play up to his potential, Katie, bar the door with this defense, man. I'm so excited about it to see what they can do. And it gives that offense time to get better because the defense can carry the water right now. I love it. So those are the questions that were answered and unanswered. The one that's unanswered is still the offensive line. How good can they get? Are they going to struggle all year? It's possible. We don't know yet. But at least we now have a running back who can help the O-line out. And we think we have a quarterback in Nico Marchiol who can make plays with his arm, even if it's just in the quick screen game, and make good decisions to help offset any weaknesses on that front line. And by the way, if Ty Edwards keeps running the ball well and Nico throws the ball well, at some point it's going to open up some opportunities for him to make some plays in the run game too, more than likely. Some design runs, potentially, even scrambles. Because they're going to have to be so worried about the pass game and so worried about Ty Edwards, it might open up more opportunities for Nico as well that he hasn't really had a chance to do yet because of some other struggles they've had. So with that being said, I want to hear your thoughts in the comments section. What do you think about these questions? Which one were answered in your book and which ones were not? Also want to give a quick shout out to my paid VIP members of this episode. We have 2 brand new paid VIP members. They are James Buchanan and Virgil Milburn. Thank them for joining. Also, 3 longtime members in this episode that we're shouting out are Tanner Tracks Premier, Bourbon Crazy, and Jake T. Thank them all for joining. You can be a member of this club by hitting the join button below if you see it. If you don't see it, go to my channel homepage. You'll find it over there, and you can find it in my description box too, a place where you can join, be a paid VIP member. For those club level $4.99 members, you get early access to some content and even some special content. Like, for example, I recently put out some sights and sounds from the game. I put up for my club level VIP members only. You can check stuff, and I also put out stuff early occasionally. Stuff like that you have access to as a club level member. All members get the random shout outs and get first priority in live stream chats as far as me answering your comments go. Want to remind you to please like this video. It really helps the algorithm. Please hype the video. There's a hype button between the download button and the thanks button below. If you hit that, it really pushes my content out to more people, shows YouTube you like me enough to hype me, because you only get 3 of those a week. And all creators don't have the hype option. So if I'm one of the creators you like, please hype me up and help me grow. Also, subscribe to the channel if you haven't. Share it with your family and friends. I'm on my way to 10K. I really appreciate your support. I appreciate you watching to the end, which is another thing YouTube appreciates. Hope the rest of your day's top shelf. God bless, and Q Country Roads.